We've all come across using filters on our dataset when trying to analyze some data, whether it's filters on one column or multiple columns. Now in this video, what I'd like to show you is how we can use aggregation methods, or if you would like to count or sum with a single or multiple criteria, and how we can do that on filtered dataset. Let me show you what I mean. If I slice by the team Australia here, you can see that we have the players for the Australian team that have scored centuries in different test formats. Now, first of all, we would like to count the number of players on my filtered data. And secondly, what we would like to see is we would like to see the number of centuries that have been scored more than 10. For example, if Ricky Ponting has scored 41 centuries, that is a true because it's more than 10. To count this, similarly count the number of entries that are more than 10. So how we can do that on a filtered data set? So I'll start with the easy function here, which is the subtotal formula, which works perfectly on filtered data set. Now since this is text and I'd like to count, so I'll use function number 3, which is count A. Put a comma, start from the first cell, right down till the end, and we should get 120 players. Let's validate that, and we can see that we have 120. Now if I slice by the Australian team, you can see that my formula updates automatically to show 20 players for the selected team. Now the second step is to use a number of nested formulas to try and find out how many centuries have been scored more than 10. Let's start with the subtotal function once again, and I'll use 9. In this case, I'm trying to sum, but then once the formula is done, I'll change it back to count. Let me just explain it with the sum function first. Now you can see the reference that the subtotal function is asking us. For the reference, we need the row numbers. So here I will type the offset function. Now the offset function will generate the row numbers. It has 5 arguments. The reference is the starting point. Click on the first cell, and to get the number of rows, I'll type the row function and click on the first cell, right down till the end, close the bracket. You can see the formula in the formula bar. Now I'm using a table feature here, so you can see table 1, and test is the heading or the field. Now the row function, if I highlight this part, click on F9, you will see that it gives me all the row numbers starting from row 4 until the last row, which is 123. Now since it's starting from 4, what I need is, since I'm embedding the offset function inside the subtotal, I would like to start from row number 1, which is this part, and not from down here below. So in order to do that, I use another row function, and I minus row 4. If I highlight this part, click on F9, you will see minus 4, and if I highlight this part, click on F9, 4, the first instance, minus 4 will give you 0, 5 minus 4 will give you 1, 6 minus 4 will give you 2, and so on. This will give me, or it will generate a sequence of numbers. Let's put a comma. For the columns, I don't need this argument, I don't need the height, and I don't need the width. Let's close the offset function and let's close the subtotal formula. Let's press enter. Now you can see that it's giving me a spin error, and if I just drag this formula to an empty cell, you will see that it gives me all the numbers that are in this column. So let's drag it back over here. Now what we can do is we can embed this formula inside the sum product. Now the sum product formula takes in arrays. So this whole part is the first array, and we'll close this bracket here and press enter, and this gives me 2186. So remember, we've used the sum function with function number 9. If I highlight this whole part, it gives me 2186. Now if I filter for Australia, it changes and the total changes automatically to 441. Now what we need to do over here is we need to count and not sum the number of centuries that have been scored more than 10. So what we can do is, inside our formula, instead of 9, I can use count over here, which is function number 2, and let's close the bracket, press enter, and it gives me 120. Now we can validate this. It's giving me 120 because it's counting, and if I count this, you can see that the numerical count is 120. Now what we need to do is we need to put a criteria. Count the number of centuries that are more than 10. So just before the sum product ends, I'll click a backspace for the comma, and for the array, which is the second part, I'll open another bracket and I'll click on the first cell, shift control down, and here I will say more than 10. And let's close the bracket and let's close the sum product formula. Now this part is giving me a 0, and the reason being because if I highlight this part, this should give me a bunch of true and falses. As you can see, true, 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 and there are falses, which means that the true part is that row is more than 10. So we need to convert this into a bunch of ones and zeros. So we can do that with a double negative. Let's press enter now. Now you will see that it gives me 99. Let me just format this. And let's validate this if the total number of centuries which are more than 10 is 99 or not. So I just filter this, number filters greater than, let's type in 10, press enter, let's highlight the number of cells, and you can see that our result is 99, which is correct. Now also let's go ahead and filter this. I'll click on Australia, and you can see that we have 19 players who have scored more than 10 centuries. If I validate this, indeed we have 19. Now let's make it dynamic so that I can refer to this formula with this number over here. Instead of 10, I'll just type the cell reference B2, click on F4 so that we log this 99, and I can drag my formula across and we should get all the results. And now if I filter for Pakistan, you will see that we have 9 players who have scored more than 10 centuries. Which is correct. So in this way, you can use nested formulas like the offset function and the subtotal function in conjunction with the sum product to achieve or aggregate results using filtered datasets. So I hope you enjoyed this part of the video and you got something out of this. If you liked the video, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel so that I can bring more videos, and I'll also leave a link to my courses on Udemy so that you can go and enroll in these courses to learn more advanced stuff. Thanks again for watching and all the best.